Welcome to this quick win on how to lead communion, which was specifically requested through the Facebook group. And feel free to throw over topics at me that I can turn into a masterclass or a quick win for you. So where's the win today as we look at how to lead communion? Well, I think it's always good to approach something that is regular, that's normative in church life, with fresh eyes, and hopefully this quick win will stimulate you to have a rethink about how you lead communion within your church community. First thing is to ask, how often do you do it? Some churches are weekly, fortnightly, monthly. Some churches I know are annual due to their tradition, or maybe it may be a mega church that logistically once a year is more than enough to do it in a Sunday service. Find out what is the best rhythm for your church. Sometimes it's good to break that rhythm. If you only do it monthly, why not do it weekly for 4 or 5 weeks in a row, really to bring an emphasis, maybe in building towards Easter. That would be a brilliant opportunity to bring a real emphasis on the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Maybe you do it weekly and you just decide, we're going to pause for a month. I mean, that would be a big shift for a church, and you may want to rattle some cages and say, hey, how are we handling this change that is a tradition and ritual in our church? And maybe you're going to speak on change and how we cope with it. And so you can pause communion for a month. Maybe have some down the back for those people who desperately must have it every week regardless. Anyway, work out how often and work how it suits your rhythm, and also sometimes how to break that rhythm. Where should we have it? Well, in your Sunday service is an obvious place. I think in small groups, it's wonderful in small groups to take time out to have communion, or the table of the Lord, as some prefer to call it. I think in a small group with your staff, with your operations team, with your board, with your key leaders at times, in a leaders meeting. So in other settings besides small groups and Sundays, I think to take the opportunity to do it, especially if you're on a retreat and discussing church and hanging out together, to pause and have communion, I think is a great opportunity just to deepen that sense of connection to the cause of Christ and what we're doing. Now remember, with communion, variety is the spice of life. Here's an idea. Get some people together and ask them to brainstorm. Just put them together after church with a cup of coffee each and say, I'll give you 15 minutes to brainstorm how we can make communion far more effective, far more ministry related in the life of our church, and see what people come up with. Some of the ideas might be so left field, they might actually work, or they might be so out there that you think that's never going to work, but at least we kind of have heard from people about what they think. So think of ways to do it in a variety way, but also use people in the church to come up with different ways. Now, I wouldn't use personally a scattergun approach, throw it out to anybody. I think I'd be a bit more intentional and strategic about that. But hey, have a go, see what works there. Thing I love about communion is the training opportunities, both within a small group setting and a Sunday service, to train people, one in platform ministry on a Sunday, two in small group leaderships, about how to lead an aspect of the gathering of the group. You can train people in how to present a short word. I generally like one thought, one verse. One story, one verse. I don't like people bringing 3 verses, 5 thoughts, going for 20 minutes at communion. I'm not a fan of that. I like it to be succinct, clear, to the point, what you're talking about and what you want people to contemplate as they're receiving those elements and partaking of communion. But it's a great training opportunity, whether it's a small group, whether it's a Sunday service, an opportunity to train people in both settings. I also think that out of that training, you have discipleship moments. Why did someone go with 4 verses and 5 stories and took 15 minutes when you asked them specifically 1 verse, 1 story, 4 minutes? What went wrong there? What's in their heart that they feel they could do that? Some people might feel like, I'm just free, and as the Lord leads, I'll go. That's a discipleship moment to step into their world. Some people who in a small group sense, I could never do that. That's a discipleship moment to say, okay, how can we overcome this fear? How can I lead you into that place where maybe I get you to pray over the elements at one point? Maybe another time I just get you to read a couple of scriptures around around the table of the Lord. There is a way to disciple people, I think, as soon as you create opportunities. Maybe people thinking brainstorming, they get upset because they do the brainstorming thing, you don't use their ideas, and they get all funny about it. There's a discipleship moment there. Don't be afraid of these moments of stepping into someone's world and shifting and correcting, sometimes rebuking, sometimes exhorting, as Jesus did with his disciples. Take all those discipleship moments. Okay, as we wrap up, what are some ways that you've done communion that have been particularly helpful for people as you've led communion, as you've done it maybe in a variety of ways? Share them in the comments below and interact with all the members here. God bless you. Thanks for joining me.